That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Confess, Fletch, the sixth film directed by Greg Mottola, which is being released on streaming courtesy of Paramount on September 16th, 2022.
Do I know any of Fletch, Greg's other films?
Yeah, he's probably best known for Superbad.
Oh.
But his debut is considered an indie classic of the 90s, The Daytrippers, which features Parker Posey and is on the Criterion Collection. You've also seen Adventureland with Kristen Stewart and Ryan Reynolds, because I remember taking you to that.
I do not remember that.
Oh, well, you've seen it. And also Paul, starring
Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver, and she's a very small role in that. And
with the alien.
And Simon Pegg.
Okay, I've seen that.
Rogen. Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah, we have it in the Sigourney collection here.
Yeah,
and also Keeping Up with the Joneses, I believe, was his last film.
What is that movie on YouTube about the dad molesting the son?
Oh, that's the Ari Aster short film.
Yes. Isn't it called Keeping Up
Something with the Johnsons.
Oh, the Johnsons.
Is it Keeping Up with the Johnsons?
I'm going to post what it is here. If you haven't seen this thing, it's not...
It's what Ari Aster a short film he directed before Hereditary or...
It's a must-see film. It's disturbing as hell.
I think it's 2011. Yeah, it's very interesting. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Confess, Fletch. So this story is based on a series of books and then was made into two films, or there are two films based on the books that starred Chevy Chase.
It's considered Chevy Chase's signature role, which I guess I wasn't quite aware of. And I just rewatched them both this week. Fletch in 1985 and then 1989's Fletch Lives, both directed by Michael Ritchie. Fletch is based on a novel, a 1975 novel by Gregory Mcdonald, who wrote a series of Fletch books, and notably he won the Edgar Award back-to-back for Fletch and Confess, Fletch, which was the 1977 novel. The 1989 film version, in which Fletch inherits a plantation, was not based on any of his books, strangely.
Well, I don't have any notes because this movie didn't give me anything I needed. Not a single thing. And it was so...
Despite a really notable cast. In fact, I think this is about at the same level as Fletch Lives, even despite having Cleavon Little in it. But
okay, the basic story is John Hamm plays this Fletch character who he likes to say he's an investigative reporter of some repute. But he's like a nobody who's just pretending to be everybody. And I'm assuming this... I mean, I'm familiar with the Chevy Chase movies. And you rewatched both of them in preparation for this, which seems like a waste of time.
It was.
But I was in and out while you were watching them. He's just like this random guy who kind of finds himself in situations and just kind of like, he's like a chameleon, but he's not particularly smart or competent. He kind of reminds me of Inspector Gadget, except nothing cool about it.
He's not dumb, he's condescending. And I think Chevy Chase did a much better job of kind of drilling down into that.
Okay, so anyway, John Hamm is Fletch, and we see him come home after like a long trip abroad to this fancy apartment he lives in Boston. And when he arrives home, there's this dead woman like downstairs. So he calls the police, they show up, and immediately they think he did it. But they don't have anything to prove he did, so he's free to go. So then we flash back a month, and we see that he was in Italy. That's where he came from. He was there working to investigate. This very wealthy man had a bunch of like priceless artwork stolen. So he's there to try to help this man find it. And so we see him meet with the man's daughter, who's played by
Lorenza Izzo.
And she immediately falls in love with him. Like immediately. So they're in this romance while he's investigating these portraits. But while all that's happening, the rich father is kidnapped. And the kidnappers, as ransom, don't want money. They want a Picasso portrait. So then another big portion of the film is Fletch working with an art dealer played by MacLachlan to get this portrait. Blah, blah, blah. The gag is the daughter is responsible for all of this. She orchestrated the theft of the portraits because she wants them. So she's in cahoots with MacLachlan. There are some red herrings, including the owner of the apartment Fletch is living in. And the rich dad, he's married to this woman who calls herself the Countess, who's played by
Marcia Gay Harden.
And of course, as the audience, we think she's responsible because she's like a gold digger. So she had her husband, she had this stuff stolen, and we also find out, and that she probably had him kidnapped. And then a plot point that I hated, knowing the fact that she's not responsible, is that she keeps saying he's dead. And they're like, well, like if you've watched any Dateline, it's like, well, when a person is suspected of something and they say they're dead, it's because, oh, you know they're dead. So of course we're like, oh, she did it. No, she's not responsible for any of it.
No, he pops up, and in fact, he staged his own kidnapping because he wanted to get his hands on the paintings.
So in the end, Kyle MacLachlan is arrested, and the daughter, who's also responsible, nothing happens to her. The dad's reunited with his gold-digging wife and his daughter.
And John Hamm, or Fletch, was able to procure a bunch of these paintings that we see throughout that Kyle MacLachlan had hidden on his boat, and each of these major characters receives a painting in the mail.
I don't understand, like, the story. It's not satisfying because none of the characters are good. I'm not rooting for anyone. The fact that that Fletch is suspected of this crime is like, I could care less if he gets convicted. They could have thrown his ass in jail. I wouldn't have cared. Then the fact that the daughter's responsible and then she just gets away scot-free and is rewarded.
Well, she's not responsible for the murder.
No, but of the orchestrating this theft.
Sure.
Like, and then she ends up getting a portrait. It's just like, okay. But, oh my gosh, the film opens and it's just like, Fletch inherently, like the Chevy Chase role, I haven't read the books, and then in this film, he's very like you said, condescending, but sort of like his affect is very flat. He's just like, So then, as the audience, I feel the same way about the story. Like, okay. I mean, John Hamm is like a handsome enough guy. He has some inherent charm, but with this character, it doesn't do anything. And the opening, I don't know. The detectives or the investigators.
Mm-hmm. Roy Wood Jr. and Ayden Mayeri, who we just saw in Spin Me Round.
I couldn't stand those characters. I mean, the instant we meet the investigators, it's just like this. I think it's trying to give calamity, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's just dumb. Like the way they're talking, the way Fletch is acting. This style of comedy does not work for me. The only funny part of this movie is the lady from Barb and Star.
Annie Mumolo playing the apartment owner's neighbor who is gossipy.
That scene and that style of comedy where I think we needed something to balance out Fletch being so flat, and I think that character did a good job because she's just talking loose and crazy and trying to cook food, and she's all nasty, like the dog is stepping in the pans and she's cooking raw chicken and setting it on fire. I think that dynamic worked, but like watching Fletch with Kyle MacLachlan, who already is like whatever, and then his character's like
a germaphobe,
and none of that was funny. Then
I liked Lucy Punch.
Oh, she's always
kind of funny because she's so odd all the time. But yeah, I liked her energy, and she gets a couple laughs. I was surprised at how flat Marcia Gay Harden felt.
The Countess is doing this thing. I feel like she's trying to give Jennifer Coolidge
flesh. And
it's just not.
Well, it's funny. Lorenza Izzo is half Italian, half Chilean. So I guess, but her Italian accent felt kind of exaggerated, even more so than in her small role she has in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She just didn't work for me.
No.
And also why she would be head over heels for Fletch, but.
That romance makes no sense, and obviously it's a comedy, so none of it has to make sense. But then then make it funny. Then,
yeah, I think what's kind of disappointing too is that for years they've been trying to various entities have been trying to remount kind of this Fletch property, I guess for the nostalgic appeal, which is never a good idea to do something. But Kevin Smith for years was trying to make this with Jason Lee. There was another project with Joshua Jackson that was trying to get off the ground. And I think it's okay if we just kind of retire this character.
I would be so surprised if anyone finds this movie funny.
Yeah, it's just so flat in every conceivable way, despite like all of the zaniness going on.
And it feels very, it feels like it was shot during COVID, because they're like sparsely populated. We see them going into like areas that should have a lot of people, and we don't see people wearing masks. So, and then there's just no people.
It felt like one of those bloated Pink Panther movies.
It really does feel like like a mediocre 90-second SNL skit that was turned into a feature-length film. Mm-hmm. And even John Hamm's acting, he's fine. Like, I don't dislike him, but I feel like the writing almost feels like on SNL when they're reading the cards, and it's a little stiff. Like, I'm not saying his acting's bad. I just think the writing is just, it just feels so like uninspired.
It just was inconsequential in every possible way. And again, the same argument can be made for the previous two Fletch films.
Sure.
I think really it was just, I think it was really Chevy Chase kind of banking on that kind of smarmy persona he has in really everything else he's in.
Yeah. What would you give this movie?
1.5.
I would give it 1.5 out of 5 as well. Anything else? Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.